Welcome to API demo video number 8. So I hinted a little bit at using SQL in the last video. So we're going to do that. But first, I made a little goof in putting the schema.sql file right inside of the model folder. I'm just thinking of project structure down the line, and I actually want it to be inside of a subfolder. So this seems like a fantastic opportunity to talk about the move command and the git move command. So I want to first, I'm inside my source folder, I'm inside my model folder, and I want to create the folder that I actually want this file to live in. So we're going to make directory data. And now I want to move the schema file inside of data. Now you're thinking I could just grab it and drop it in there. But GitHub, if you don't explicitly tell Git that you're moving a file through the command line, it will think that you deleted one file and added another, which may not be a big deal, but it's just kind of it will add to what you're committing. So let's do a git mv, which is move. And so git move. So we're inside of model. So I'm going to move schema.sql, and so that's the first argument. And the second argument I want to give it is where I want it to go. So if I say data, which is the folder, /schema.sql, and I move it, oh, right. Okay, so if you haven't added a folder yet, it doesn't recognize it. So first of all, I'm just going to back out to the main directory. All right, I'm in the main directory. I'm going to do git status, and you'll see that there's some untracked files in there. So let's track them, and the way that we do that is git add -N all. So now if I do git status again, it's there, and it's being tracked. So now I want to do that move again. So git move. And now I have to go a few levels down because I'm in the top level. So I want to move git move source model schema.sql. And I want to move it to source model data schema.sql. And now you'll notice the file's been moved and Git knows about it and is happy. Okay. So that's that. So let's actually open up the schema.sql file. So the schema file is particularly to create our table. It's not for inserting any data into it. It's just to create it and say, hey, these are the rows that you should have in this table, or the columns rather. So SQL, as I said before, is a separate language. Create table, and that is the command to create a table, and you give it a name. So we're going to say posts, and everything else goes inside of a pair of regular parentheses. The semicolon, which is, I know it's a lot of controversy, but it's arguably not necessary in a lot of JavaScript because when JavaScript is processing at runtime, it adds the semicolons back in. In SQL, you will get an immediate error if you don't include it. So just remember that it's important. And so now we're inside of this create table posts. What columns do we want to have for this data? So the first thing that we always need, and that every table always needs, is an ID column. This is a unique number that is given to a row. It just makes your life a heck of a lot easier, and we're going to actually be using it a lot when we are selecting particular posts. And so we want this to be serial, meaning that it goes up sequentially, primary key. So this is the main indicator of this row. So that's the ID. Next thing we want to do is, let's say, a username. If we were doing authentication, this would be very, very different, but we're just going to literally let people like write any old name that they want on a post. So, and we want this to be text. Next thing that we want is probably a title for the post. This can be text as well. Next thing we want is a body. This can be text as well. One thing I'm thinking about for the username is maybe we shouldn't let two different people named Bob have the same username, just to make sure that it's always unique. And so we're going to add unique as a keyword here, meaning that if somebody else named Bob tries to make a post, they're not going to be able to. And then finally, we're going to do not null on these, which means that you can't post an empty entry to the database. Okay, so that's create table posts. We have a schema file, and that's really all we're going to need for this project. For more in-depth SQL, maybe at some point I'll create a different video series where we're creating a bunch of tables that have joins and all of that fun stuff. So now that we have our posts, the next thing we want to do, so if you installed Postgres correctly, you should have access to a couple of commands. So the first one is create DB. And create DB just creates a database with whatever name we give it. So remember, the database name is different from the table name. It's the name for essentially the entire project. So I am also going to call this API demo. All right. Postgres isn't super awesome at giving you good feedback, but as long as it didn't complain, if it just let me enter the command and hit enter, it's there. And if we want to verify that it's there, we can open up Postico, which you may or may not have downloaded. Oh no, you're looking at my old project. Okay. So here, let me actually quit out. Okay, so if I connect to my local host and I look in there, I have a number of databases, one of which is API demo. Right now, this thing is going to be completely empty because we haven't loaded the schema file yet, but it's there. So now, the next thing we need to do is tell Postgres that this database exists. So this is going to be a little tricky, but psql is the first command. And then we're going to put in the name of the database that we just created. So psql API demo. And now we need to give it the path to this file. And the little, this is just telling it that we're feeding it essentially into this database. So we are at the top level. So we're going to go source, model, data, schema.sql. And let's cross fingers and hope that I did this correctly. All right, so if you got create table, you did it correctly. If you didn't, check your path and make sure that you aren't in a subfolder, but this should work. And so now we've created a table, and if we go to Postico and we go back and look at the table itself, that is bizarre. Okay, there it is. There's post. Whew. Okay, so ID, username, title, and body. So we don't have any data in there yet, but our database is set up and it's ready to be used. So I am going to do a quick commit here. So remember, git status, we're going to git add -p. That is the hunk that we want to add. We're going to git commit -m create schema.sql file. And we're going to do a git push, and it's set upstream origin SQL setup. Oops, I must have made a typo there. Git push set upstream, upsteam SQL setup. All right, you'll want to go to GitHub, merge in that branch, but I will meet you in the next video.